In the depths of uncharted space, a desperate cry for help echoed from the peaceful Zephyrian Empire, a race on the brink of extinction. The Void Swarm, a parasitic force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, hunted them down, leaving death in its wake. But when the galaxy's greatest fear becomes their only hope, the Death Worlders of Earth answer. Led by Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, humanity's first interstellar rescue fleet sets out into the unknown, knowing the journey ahead will test them in ways they never imagined. The stakes are high, the danger unimaginable, but one thing is certain: Earth's warriors will not let the innocent fall. The fight for survival begins, and the Void Swarm will soon learn that there is no greater terror in the galaxy than the human fleet. The silent scream the deep space monitoring station orbiting Jupiter hummed with quiet efficiency as Dr. Sarah Chun adjusted her headphones for the third time that night. She had been tracking routine stellar emissions for 6 hours, her eyes burning from staring at the cascade of data flowing across multiple screens. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Something was different tonight. At T exactly 23:47 Greenwich Mean Time, her equipment detected an anomaly. The signal was faint, barely distinguishable from cosmic background radiation, but it carried patterns that made her heart race. Sarah had spent 15 years studying radio astronomy, and she had never seen anything like this. The transmission wasn't random stellar noise or electromagnetic interference from Jupiter's massive magnetic field. This was artificial, intelligent, and desperate. She ran the signal through every analysis program the station possessed. The frequency modulations were complex, layered with mathematical relationships that screamed intelligence to anyone who understood the language of the cosmos. But more than that, there was an emotional quality to the patterns that made her skin crawl. Fear, urgency, and a pleading quality that transcended species or language barriers. The breakthrough came when Sarah realized the signal wasn't just a message, but a linguistic primer. Whoever sent this had included basic mathematical concepts, periodic table information, and gradually more complex ideas. They were teaching their language while simultaneously begging for help. Sarah felt tears forming as she began to understand fragments of the transmission. Words like dying, consumed, and last hope emerged from the alien syntax. Working through the night, Sarah pieced together enough of a language to understand the core message. The transmission came from something called the Zephyrian Empire, a peaceful confederation of worlds located roughly 47 light-years from Earth. They were under attack by entities they called the Void Swarm, parasitic beings that consumed the life force of entire civilizations. 17 Zephyrian worlds had already fallen silent, their populations vanishing without a trace. The message had been broadcasting for months, growing weaker as the senders lost power and hope. What terrified Sarah most was the description of what happened to consumed worlds. The Void Swarm didn't just kill populations, they drained every trace of biological energy, leaving behind perfectly preserved but completely lifeless planets. Billions of beings turned to empty husks in a matter of days. Sarah immediately contacted Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, commander of Earth's newly formed Interstellar Defense Command. Rodriguez was a veteran of 3 major conflicts on Earth and the architect of humanity's first faster-than-light naval doctrine. He arrived at the monitoring station within 2 hours, bringing with him a team of linguists, military analysts, and xenobiologists. The Admiral studied the decoded message with growing alarm. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 18 months earlier, and contact with alien civilizations remained theoretical. Now, they faced a decision that could determine humanity's role in a galaxy apparently filled with both peaceful species and cosmic predators. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the team's xenobiologist, provided crucial context as they analyzed the biological data embedded in the transmission. The Zephyrians described themselves as fragile beings evolved on low-gravity worlds with stable climates. They possessed advanced technology but had never developed weapons of war because their evolution had never required them. They were exactly the type of peaceful, intelligent species that science fiction had always promised humanity would find among the stars, The void swarm represented the opposite extreme. According to Zephyrian observations, they were silicon-based parasites from the galaxy's outer rim, evolved in the vacuum of space itself. They required no atmosphere, felt no pain, and possessed no concept of mercy or negotiation. They existed solely to consume biological energy, moving from system to system like a cosmic plague. Admiral Rodriguez faced an impossible decision. Earth possessed exactly 12 faster-than-light capable warships, designed for exploration and system defense rather than interstellar combat. The journey to Zephyrian space would take every ship humanity possessed, leaving Earth completely undefended. Worse, they would be flying blind into a conflict against an enemy that had already conquered most of an advanced galactic civilization. The debate in the emergency session of the United Earth Council lasted 14 hours. Representatives argued about humanity's responsibility to intervene in alien conflicts, the risk to Earth's security, and whether 12 ships could possibly make a difference against a threat that had overwhelmed hundreds of worlds. Some council members insisted that Earth should focus on defending itself rather than rushing to help strangers. Dr. Chun provided the argument that ultimately swayed the vote. She had continued analyzing the Zephyrian transmission and discovered references to something they called Death World species. According to their databases, most intelligent life evolved on peaceful worlds with stable conditions. Species like humanity, evolved through constant environmental challenges and warfare, were extremely rare and considered almost mythical by most galactic civilizations. The Zephyrians had apparently detected Earth's early radio transmissions decades earlier and classified humans as a Death World species. Their message included a desperate hope that if any Deathworlders received their call, they might possess the survival instincts and aggressive capabilities necessary to fight the Void Swarm. They were specifically calling for help from the type of beings that most peaceful species found frightening. Admiral Rodriguez realized that humanity wasn't just being asked to help. They were being tested by the galaxy itself. Earth's response to this crisis would determine how other species viewed humans for generations to come. Were they the type of beings who helped strangers in need, or the type who prioritized their own safety above all else? The vote was close, but the Council authorized Operation Lifeline, Earth's first interstellar military intervention. Admiral Rodriguez would command the entire Earth fleet in a desperate rescue mission to Zephyrian space. Every available ship would participate, from the massive battlecruiser Indomitable to the experimental stealth frigates that had never been tested in actual combat. Captain Elena Vasquez received her orders while conducting training exercises near Mars. Her ship, the destroyer Relentless, was one of Earth's fastest vessels, designed for hit-and-run tactics against superior forces. Vasquez had earned her command through exceptional performance in Earth's recent colonial conflicts, but she had never imagined commanding a starship in battle against alien invaders. The fleet assembly at Luna Station became humanity's most ambitious military undertaking. Captain James Thompson brought his heavy cruiser Thunderhawk from the Outer System Patrol, its massive armor and powerful weapon systems making it the fleet's primary battle platform. Commander Alex Reeves led a squadron of 12 fighter craft, pilots barely out of training but eager to prove themselves against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy. Each ship carried supplies for an extended campaign and experimental weapons designed based on theoretical alien physiology. Earth's scientists had worked around the clock to develop countermeasures against silicon-based life forms, producing electromagnetic pulse weapons and resonance disruptors that might prove effective against the Void Swarm. Dr. Chun insisted on joining the mission aboard the communications ship Hermes, bringing the most advanced translation and analysis equipment Earth possessed. She had become humanity's leading expert on Zephyrian language and culture, making her essential for any diplomatic contact with survivors. As the fleet prepared for departure, long-range sensors detected troubling signs from the direction of Zephyrian space. Several star systems showed the characteristic energy signatures of massive population centers, but their radio emissions had ceased entirely. The Void Swarm was still active, still consuming worlds, while Earth debated and prepared. Admiral Rodriguez addressed the fleet from the bridge of his flagship Sovereign. His words were broadcast to every ship and recorded for transmission to Earth. Humanity was about to announce its presence to the galaxy by rushing to help complete strangers. Whatever happened in Zephyrian space would define Earth's relationship with the cosmos for centuries to come. The 12 ships of Earth's first interstellar fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives simultaneously, disappearing into the void between stars. Behind them, Earth's orbital defenses activated automated systems and prepared for the possibility that they might face the consequences of humanity's decision alone. Ahead lay unknown space, alien refugees, and an enemy that had already proven capable of destroying advanced civilizations. The journey to Zephyrian space would take 43 hours through hyperspace. During that time, Admiral Rodriguez's fleet would travel farther from Earth than any human had ever gone, carrying with them the hopes and fears of an entire species. They were no longer just explorers or defenders, but representatives of humanity's values in a galaxy that apparently judged species by their willingness to fight for others. The Void Swarm had consumed 17 worlds and billions of lives. Earth's 12 ships carried fewer than 8,000 personnel total, but they also carried something the galaxy had rarely seen: Deathworlders willing to risk everything for strangers who had asked for help. The real test of humanity's character was about to begin in the darkness between the stars, where peaceful species waited for salvation and ancient predators prepared for their next meal. Into the darkness, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace into a graveyard of stars. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, watching his tactical display populate with sensor contacts that made his blood run cold. The Kepler 442 system, once home to nearly 2 billion Zephyrians, showed no signs of life despite its planets remaining perfectly intact in their orbits. Captain Elena Vasquez reported from the destroyer Relentless as her ship conducted close-range scans of the third planet. The cities were still there, their crystalline spires gleaming in the system's pale sunlight, but no energy signatures indicated any living beings. Streets that should have bustled with activity lay empty and silent. Parks and recreational areas showed no movement whatsoever. It was as if every living thing had simply vanished, leaving behind a perfect museum of a dead civilization. Dr. Sarah Chun worked frantically at her communication station aboard the Hermes, scanning every frequency for signs of survivors or additional distress signals. The silence was more terrifying than any scream for help could have been. Her translation algorithms detected automated systems still broadcasting weather reports and traffic updates to a population that no longer existed. The mundane normalcy of it all made the devastation feel even more profound. Commander Alex Reeves led his fighter squadron on reconnaissance flights through the outer system, searching for any trace of what had happened to the missing population. His pilots reported finding massive starports and orbital habitats that appeared completely functional but utterly lifeless. Personal vehicles drifted in perfect formation along transit routes, their automated systems still following traffic patterns for passengers who would never reach their destinations. The breakthrough came when Captain James Thompson's heavy cruiser Thunderhawk detected unusual energy readings from the system's asteroid belt. Long-range sensors showed structures that had definitely not been there when the Zephyrians mapped their own system. Something had built installations among the asteroids, creating a network of facilities that pulsed with alien technology. Admiral Rodriguez ordered the fleet to maintain maximum stealth as they approached the asteroid installations. Earth's ships had been designed with radar-absorbing materials and electronic countermeasures originally intended for use against other human vessels. Now, those same technologies allowed them to observe an alien enemy without being detected. What they found defied every assumption about space-based life forms. The Void Swarm installations were partially organic, growing like coral reefs among the asteroids while incorporating metallic components that clearly served technological functions. Massive biomechanical structures pumped fluids through transparent tubes while crystalline formations stored what appeared to be concentrated energy in forms that Earth scientists had never encountered. Dr. Chen's analysis of the energy signatures revealed the horrible truth about what had happened to the Zephyrian population. The installations were processing facilities where biological matter was converted into a form of pure life essence that the Void Swarm could absorb directly. Every person, animal, and plant from the planet below had been transported to these asteroid facilities and systematically drained of everything that made them alive. The discovery explained why the Void Swarm left planets physically intact while completely eliminating their populations. They weren't interested in destroying worlds or claiming territory. They were farmers harvesting biological energy on a galactic scale, moving from system to system like locusts consuming everything living before moving on to the next harvest. Captain Vasquez requested permission to attack the installations immediately, but Admiral Rodriguez ordered the fleet to withdraw and observe. They had learned valuable intelligence about their enemy, but engaging now would alert the Void Swarm to humanity's presence before they had located any Zephyrian survivors. The mission was rescue first, revenge second. The human fleet spent 3 days moving carefully through the dead system, cataloging Void Swarm facilities and learning their operational patterns. The enemy appeared to be nocturnal, with most activity occurring during the local night cycle. Their biomechanical ships emerged from hiding places among the asteroids to patrol the system in predictable patterns that human tactical analysts began to map and understand. Commander Reeves discovered that the Void Swarm scouts were vulnerable during their transition periods when they moved between asteroid bases. Their organic components required periodic rest cycles that left them temporarily defenseless. It was a small window of opportunity, but human pilots were trained to exploit tiny advantages against superior forces. The next major discovery came when Dr. Chun detected a faint transmission from the edge of the system. Her equipment barely registered the signal, but the mathematical patterns were unmistakably Zephyrian. Someone had survived the harvest and was still broadcasting a distress signal from a location the Void Swarm had apparently missed. The signal led them to a mining facility on a remote asteroid where a group of Zephyrian workers had managed to shield themselves from the initial attack. Their improvised shelter was running on emergency power and would fail within days, but they had managed to stay hidden for weeks while the Void Swarm processed the rest of their species. Captain Thompson volunteered to lead the rescue mission with his heavily armored cruiser, providing cover while smaller ships extracted the survivors. The operation required precise timing and absolute silence until the moment of contact. Any mistake would alert the entire Void Swarm presence to humanity's intervention. The rescue began at dawn local time when Void Swarm activity was at its lowest point. Captain Vasquez brought the Relentless in close to the asteroid while Thompson's Thunderhawk positioned itself to intercept any enemy response. Commander Reeves had his fighters spread throughout the asteroid field, ready to create diversions if needed. The first human Zephyrian contact occurred when Dr. Chun established communication with the survivors. Their leader, a scientist named Lyrian who served as an unofficial ambassador for her people, could barely believe that Deathworlders had actually responded to their call for help. The concept was so unprecedented in galactic history that many peaceful species considered it mythical. Lyrian provided crucial intelligence about Void Swarm capabilities and weaknesses while her people were evacuated to the human ships. The enemy was silicon-based, but required organic components to power their technology. They were essentially biological batteries that had learned to harvest other life forms to extend their own existence. Most importantly, they had never encountered aggressive resistance from their victims. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly when Void Swarm scouts detected the human presence. 3 biomechanical vessels emerged from asteroid hideouts and began moving toward the rescue site with obvious hostile intent. Their ships were unlike anything in human databases, appearing to grow and shift as they flew rather than following conventional aerospace principles. Captain Vasquez engaged the lead scout with the Relentless, while Captain Thompson moved to intercept the larger vessels. Human weapons proved surprisingly effective against Void Swarm biology. Kinetic rounds designed for ship-to-ship combat caused massive trauma to their organic components, while electromagnetic pulse weapons disrupted the neural networks that controlled their technology. The battle was brief but decisive. Human tactics emphasizing speed and firepower overwhelmed enemies that had grown accustomed to passive resistance from peaceful species. The Void Swarm scouts were destroyed before they could transmit a warning to their main force, preserving the element of surprise for humanity's larger mission. Commander Reeves led a follow-up attack against the nearest processing facility while the main fleet evacuated the Zephyrian survivors. His fighters used precision strikes to destroy the biomechanical infrastructure while avoiding damage to any remaining organic material that might represent other species' remains. It was humanity's first small victory against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy. Ambassador Lyrian provided devastating intelligence during her debriefing aboard the Sovereign. The Void Swarm had been consuming civilizations for thousands of years, always moving toward the galactic core, where population densities were higher. They had already harvested over 300 intelligent species and showed no signs of slowing their advance. More immediately concerning, Lyrian reported that a massive Void Swarm fleet was currently attacking Ethros, the last major Zephyrian stronghold. Over 40 million civilians were trapped on the heavily fortified world, while their remaining military forces fought a desperate delaying action. The defenders could hold out for perhaps 2 weeks before the planet's shields failed and the final harvest began. Admiral Rodriguez faced a tactical nightmare. Ethros was defended by the remnants of an advanced military that had been fighting the Void Swarm for months. They possessed weapons and defenses far beyond anything Earth had developed. If the Zephyrians couldn't hold their own fortified world, what hope did 12 human ships have against the enemy's main force? But the mathematics of the situation were brutally clear. 40 million lives hung in the balance, and humanity was the only force in the galaxy apparently willing and able to intervene. Earth's fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and operating in unknown space against an enemy that had conquered hundreds of worlds. The odds were impossible, but the alternative was abandoning millions of innocent beings to a fate worse than death. Dr. Chun continued analyzing Void Swarm technology with help from the rescued Zephyrians. Their biomechanical systems were incredibly sophisticated but had critical vulnerabilities that peaceful species had never thought to exploit. The organic components required specific environmental conditions to function properly, and their neural networks could be disrupted by certain electromagnetic frequencies. Captain Thompson began modifying his ship's weapons based on the new intelligence, while Captain Vasquez worked with Commander Reeves to develop new tactical doctrines. They had learned that human aggression and adaptability gave them significant advantages over an enemy that had grown overconfident from centuries of easy victories. The human fleet set course for Ethros with their rescued Zephyrians serving as guides and technical advisors. Behind them lay the dead system that had been their introduction to galactic warfare. Ahead waited the largest Void Swarm fleet ever assembled, currently in the process of harvesting the last free world of an ancient and peaceful civilization. Admiral Rodriguez knew that the next battle would determine not just the fate of the Zephyrians, but humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. Earth's children were about to announce their presence to the cosmos by either saving 40 million lives or dying in the attempt. Either outcome would send a message that would echo across the stars for centuries. The journey to Ethros would take 18 hours through hyperspace. During that time, the human fleet would prepare for the most important battle in their species' history, carrying with them the hopes of an entire civilization and the weight of proving that Deathworlders truly were willing to fight for others. The last stand the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace into the Ethros system to witness the death throes of an ancient civilization. Admiral Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Sovereign as his tactical display populated with contacts that defied comprehension. Over 2,000 Void Swarm vessels surrounded the planet Ethros like a living plague, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with malevolent energy as they systematically destroyed the world's orbital defenses. Captain Elena Vasquez reported from the destroyer Relentless as her sensors analyzed the enemy formation. The Void Swarm had deployed their largest ships in a tight blockade around Ethros, while smaller vessels conducted continuous attacks against the planet's shield generators. Each successful strike caused the protective barrier to flicker and weaken, bringing the final harvest closer to reality. The scale of the enemy force was staggering. Individual Void Swarm bioships were larger than anything in the human fleet, their organic hulls stretching for kilometers while bristling with weapons that seemed to grow and shift like living tissue. The largest vessels appeared to be mobile processing facilities, ready to begin harvesting the planet's population the moment the shields failed completely. Ambassador Lyrian stood beside Admiral Rodriguez on the bridge, her crystalline features reflecting the horror of watching her species' final stronghold under siege. She had been in contact with the Planetary Defense Command since their arrival, coordinating what might be the last transmission ever sent from a free Zephyrian world. The defenders had perhaps 6 hours before their shield generators, overloaded from continuous bombardment, the doctor. Sarah Chun worked frantically at her communication station, analyzing Void Swarm tactical patterns and searching for weaknesses in their formation. The enemy had arranged their fleet in concentric circles around Ethros, with the largest vessels maintaining the blockade while smaller ships conducted attack runs. It was an efficient siege formation, but it also concentrated their forces in a way that might be vulnerable to the right kind of assault. Captain James Thompson studied the tactical situation from his position aboard the heavy cruiser Thunderhawk. His ship carried the most powerful weapons in the human fleet, but even the Thunderhawk's main guns would barely scratch the massive bioships surrounding Ethros. Conventional tactics would be suicide against such overwhelming numbers, but the situation demanded unconventional thinking. The breakthrough came when Commander Alex Reeves noticed something unusual about the system's asteroid belt. Ethros was orbited by a dense field of metallic asteroids that the Zephyrians had been mining for centuries. More importantly, many of those asteroids contained unstable isotopes that could be triggered to create massive explosions. The asteroid field could become a weapon if someone was willing to fly into it and begin a controlled chain reaction. Admiral Rodriguez realized that humanity's best chance lay not in direct confrontation, but in environmental warfare. Earth's fleet couldn't match the Void Swarm's firepower, but they could use the system's natural features as force multipliers. The asteroid field could become a minefield that would disrupt the enemy formation and create opportunities for smaller human ships to engage effectively. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed additional tactical opportunities in the system's unique characteristics. Ethros orbited unusually close to its star, creating intense solar radiation that would interfere with the Void Swarm's biomechanical systems. The organic components of their ships required specific environmental conditions, and prolonged exposure to high-energy radiation would degrade their performance significantly. Captain Vasquez volunteered to lead the initial attack run through the asteroid field, while Captain Thompson positioned his cruiser to provide covering fire. Commander Reeves would coordinate fighter strikes against specific targets once the larger ships disrupted the enemy formation. It was a desperate plan that required split-second timing and perfect coordination, but it was their only chance to save 40 million lives. The battle began when Captain Vasquez brought the relentless screaming through the outer edge of the asteroid field at maximum velocity. Her ship's advanced sensors allowed her to navigate the dense debris while triggering carefully placed charges on unstable asteroids. Each explosion created a cascade effect that sent metallic fragments racing through space at devastating velocities. The Void Swarm response was immediate and violent. Dozens of bioships turned away from their siege positions to intercept the human destroyer, their organic weapon systems charging with deadly intent. But the asteroid field had become a chaotic environment that favored speed and maneuverability over raw firepower. The relentless dance between explosions while enemy vessels struggled to track her through the debris. Captain Thompson brought the Thunderhawk into the fray with guns blazing, his heavy weapons targeting the largest Void Swarm vessels while they were distracted by the asteroid bombardment. His ship's electromagnetic pulse weapons proved devastatingly effective against the enemy's biomechanical systems, causing their organic components to spasm and malfunction. Several massive bioships began listing helplessly as their neural networks suffered cascade failures. Commander Reeves led his fighter squadron in precision strikes against key targets throughout the enemy formation. His pilots had trained for impossible odds, and they rose to the challenge with devastating effectiveness. Human fighters were smaller and faster than anything the Void Swarm had encountered, able to slip through their defensive fire and target vulnerable points on their biomechanical hulls. The tide of battle began to turn as the human fleet's environmental warfare tactics disrupted the carefully organized siege. Asteroid explosions created debris fields that blocked Void Swarm sensors, while solar radiation interfered with their biological systems. The enemy found themselves fighting in conditions that favored their opponents rather than themselves for the first time in centuries. Ambassador Lyrian coordinated with the planetary defense forces to lower Ethros' shields at precisely calculated moments, allowing human ships to enter the atmosphere and provide close air support for ground-based defenders. The sight of alien vessels fighting to protect Zephyrian cities sent shockwaves through both species as they witnessed the birth of true interspecies cooperation. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Void Swarm's largest vessels began converging on the human fleet with obvious intent to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Captain Thompson realized that someone would need to make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the evacuation of Ethros could continue. His ship was the most heavily armored and carried the most powerful weapons, making it the logical choice for a final desperate assault. Captain James Thompson addressed his crew over the ship's communication system as he prepared the Thunderhawk for its last mission. They would ram the largest Void Swarm bio ship while triggering a cascade overload in their reactor core. The resulting explosion would take out dozens of enemy vessels and create enough chaos for the evacuation ships to escape. His crew volunteered to stay with him, refusing to abandon their captain or their duty. The Thunderhawk's final charge became the stuff of legend throughout the galaxy. Thompson's ship accelerated directly toward the massive Void Swarm flagship while taking devastating fire from dozens of enemy weapons. The human cruiser's armor held just long enough for them to reach ramming distance before the reactor overload triggered explosion that could be seen from the planet's surface. The destruction of the Void Swarm flagship sent shockwaves through their remaining forces, disrupting their coordination and creating panic in ranks that had never experienced effective resistance. Human ships pressed their advantage ruthlessly, targeting command vessels and communication nodes, while the enemy struggled to reorganize their shattered formation. Dr. Chun detected something unprecedented happening throughout the Void Swarm fleet. The destruction of their flagship had triggered some kind of collective psychological breakdown in their biomechanical systems. The organic components of their ships were experiencing fear for the first time in their species' history, causing widespread system failures as their neural networks couldn't process the unfamiliar emotion. Admiral Rodriguez seized the opportunity to launch a full assault against the remaining enemy forces. The human fleet had been reduced to 7 operational ships, but their opponents were in complete disarray. Captain Vasquez led the charge with the damaged, but still functional Relentless, while Commander Reeves's surviving fighters provided precision strikes against fleeing enemy vessels. The battle for Ethros ended when the remaining Void Swarm vessels fled the system in complete disorder. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the ancient predators had been defeated in open combat by their intended victims. The sight of biomechanical ships retreating from Deathworlder aggression would become a turning point in the galaxy's understanding of interspecies conflict. Ambassador Lyrian worked with Admiral Rodriguez to coordinate the massive evacuation of Ethros, while human engineers helped repair the planet's damaged infrastructure. Over 38 million Zephyrians were successfully relocated to safer systems, while their homeworld was rebuilt with human defensive technology. The cooperation between species during the evacuation became a model for future interstellar relations. The victory at Ethros sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as news of humanity's intervention spread to other civilizations. Peaceful species that had lived in terror of the Void Swarm for centuries suddenly had hope that the ancient predators could be defeated. More importantly, they had proof that Deathworlders truly were willing to risk everything to protect strangers. The Dr. Chen's post-battle analysis revealed that the Void Swarm's psychological breakdown had been permanent rather than temporary. The organic components of their biomechanical systems had been fundamentally altered by experiencing fear and defeat. Their neural networks could no longer function properly, making it impossible for them to coordinate the large-scale operations that had made them so dangerous. Captain Vasquez received a battlefield promotion to Admiral as Earth began organizing the Galactic Defense Alliance with surviving Zephyrian forces and volunteers from dozens of other species. Her experience fighting the Void Swarm made her invaluable in training other species' militaries to resist biomechanical warfare. The destroyer Relentless became the flagship of humanity's first interstellar peacekeeping force. Commander Reeves established the galaxy's first integrated fighter command, training pilots from multiple species to work together against common threats. His tactical innovations during the Battle of Ethros became standard doctrine for dealing with biomechanical enemies. The fighter squadron that had helped save Ethros became the core of a new interstellar defense force. Admiral Rodriguez returned to Earth as humanity's first interstellar hero, but he quickly volunteered to lead the continuing campaign against scattered Void Swarm remnants throughout the galaxy. His fleet had proven that Deathworlders could protect peaceful species without becoming conquerors themselves. Earth's children had found their role in the cosmos as guardians rather than rulers. The rescue mission that began with a desperate alien distress signal had transformed into something far greater than anyone had imagined. Humanity had not only saved the Zephyrian species, but had fundamentally changed the galaxy's understanding of what was possible when different species worked together. The age of the Void Swarm was ending, replaced by an era where Deathworlders stood guard over peaceful civilizations. Years later, when Ambassador Lyrian established the first permanent embassy on Earth, she brought with her a message from the Galactic Council. Humanity had been officially recognized as the protectors of peaceful species throughout the galaxy. It was a responsibility that came with tremendous challenges, but Earth's children had already proven they were worthy of the trust placed in them. The story of the Battle of Ethros became a legend told throughout the galaxy, inspiring peaceful species to believe that they could survive in a dangerous universe. More importantly, it established the principle that Deathworlders would answer any call for help, no matter how desperate or dangerous the situation might be. The galaxy had learned that some species were willing to fight for strangers, and that made all the difference.